Well, hello to everyone, and all of you out there in Zoomerville. It's nice to have a good-sized audience today, if I can refer to it that way. It's always kind of pumps you up a little when you got more people to talk to. And it's been quite a month, the last month, for both Jody and me. We've had our share of issues, just like many of you have had with viruses and other things, and so we're kind of back to normal now. So it's great to be up here. And okay, so what am I going to talk to you about today? Cats, fruits, talents, and gifts. Gifts of the Spirit. That's the title of my sermonette. Cats, fruits, talents, and gifts. So what on earth do cats have to do with fruits, talents, and gifts of the Spirit? Absolutely nothing. However, it's 40 years ago. I had a situation. Sat on my couch. I watched red streaks going up my arm from my hand towards my heart. Streaks were almost up to my shoulder. I knew that I had to call Walter Warrington. I was attending in Akron at the time. He was a local elder there. I had to call him for an anointing cloth. And, it was a situation that could lead to death if left unchecked, blood poisoning. Been going on since the previous evening, and I realized that the streaks were blood poisoning. I have somewhat of a medical background, and I had absolutely no doubt, and this was back in 1983. I was attending the Akron congregation at the time. I knew from personal experience that Mr. Warrington had the gift of healing. Not necessarily the reason I called him in particular, but I thought, well, good, I get to call Mr. Warrington. Every time previous when he anointed me, I would be healed. There was absolutely no doubt. My perception that he had that gift. So let's go to James 5:14 to 15. This is a New International Version, just to remind us of the scripture. This is there anyone among you sick? Let him call the elders of the church to pray over him and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord, and prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. Lord will raise them up, and if they've sinned, they will be forgiven. Of course, we're talking about, in a sense, different categories of sin. I mean, there's certain things, you eat a whole lot of pork, it's going to create a physical issue, for example, okay? But whatever it caused well, I'll tell you later what caused the blood poisoning, but let's go back to the cats. So I know some of you are cat lovers, and I know some of you, whatever. And I'm kind of a cat lover, Not that I always was, not that I disliked them, I just never given any thought of ever getting one. Yeah, my wife wanted a cat. I said, well, the landlord doesn't allow. No, he doesn't allow any pets, and I thought that was my way out. But I agreed. We asked him, and he said, yes, okay. Never imagined, he did say yes, never imagined that would happen. So shortly after one of those feline friendlies came into my life, I realized what unique creatures they were, that they are. First one, named Baby, and the image of that famous cartoon cat, Sylvester. Then there was Brutus. Brutus fit his name. He was my favorite. He was a rescue kitten from the APL. And when I first laid eyes on him, he was swatting away at the other kittens to keep them away from the food he wanted. He obviously had been starving when he was brought into the animal shelter, and immediately caught my heart. I knew he'd be the one to adopt, and he was, that classic tiger stray variety. He had that infamous M on his forehead. And later on, when Brutus was on one of his beat up the other cat modes, I would kiddingly say, M for mean. And, and it's rather problematic for me because cats and dogs live just long enough to completely catch your heart, they're loved, and then they die. So Brutus was 15, Baby was 13, and the last one, Smokey, was 17. And their lives all overlapped. And, because once you get one, you kind of want another one later. So over the years, these are lessons learned about cats. Lessons learned. Wow. So over the years, I discovered with my cats, there's 3 times in dealing with them when you have to wear body armor. Okay, giving a bath, rare. Administering medicine, difficult. Clipping nails, most dangerous, clipping nails. And so I clip the nails every few months. The problem with nail clipping is that it requires the cat to be on its back. The cat quickly determines this is not an event it wants to be involved in. You can see what you're doing. It's on its back. The secret is you watch the cat's eyes as you proceed. And when the eyes dilate, the cat just took charge. You would perhaps get one more nail clipped before the hissing and the battle wills began. So what happened? Okay. What happened was, although Brutus was always an indoor cat, somehow he developed fleas, and I decided to give him a flea bath. Process of doing so, he's not on his back, giving him a bath. I'm not looking into his eyes for the dilation, and too late, teeth in hand, ouch. Top it all off, probably injected some of the chemicals into my hand. So, next day I sat there on the couch, red streak. Slowly going up. Something's a blood poisoning. So I knew, like I said, I knew I had to be anointed. I called Mr. Warrington. I knew he had that gift, or I thought he did. And he said, pray for me right away. Send me a cloth. To hear the conclusion of that a little later. But see now, this is what my sermon's really about. Mistaken understanding. So there's a terminological, in a sense, I guess you could say word speak, trend in the church, especially in recent years, where we use the 3 terms, talents, fruits, and gifts, interchangeably. Some cases kind of including talents and fruits in with gifts of the Spirit. So this is what I want to speak about, the difference. Gifts of the Spirit, such as healing, are special abilities provided precisely by God as he sees fit for his specific purposes, and only, of course, to someone who already possesses his Spirit. That would be somebody converted, generally a minister. Okay, that's rare. It's rare that he would actually give a gift in our day and age in that sense. And if you go in 1 Corinthians, it lists them, if you want to look it up later. No matter how hard one may attempt to do so, these gifts cannot be self-obtained. They cannot be self-developed. And if someone does possess one of these gifts of the Spirit, it can only be used for godly purposes. If you study the actual gifts, this becomes obvious. They cannot be used for any other purpose. They cannot be used for evil. Now we've been speaking of gifts of the Spirit, but there's a general sense, though. Somebody, we might say, well, they have a gift of woodworking, or for cooking great meals, or, that's totally different. That's in the category of talents. So you have the gifts of the Spirit. Talent. Talent is a natural born or developed trait that can be possessed by an unconverted person or a converted person. A talent can be used for good or for evil purposes. For example, an individual may have a talent for writing. they could use that talent to write edifying articles about how to help people that are in need, or they could write evil articles about how to effectively steal, lie to others, and hurt others. Okay, so fruits of the Spirit, talents. Then there's, gifts of the Spirit, talents, but then there's the fruits. Now these, if you go to Galatians 5, 22 to 23, these are 9 attributes of a Christian life, according to Paul in his letter in the Galatians, Galatians 5, 22 to 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So, a truly converted person could and should have all of these fruits, You have to work on it sometimes. But an unconverted person could have these fruits also in a different sense. And I use my physical father as a example. He was a good person, and I believe he had all those attributes that we could call fruits of the Spirit, but not given because he's converted, because he wasn't converted. He didn't have God's Spirit. So let me summarize this. A person can have tremendous talents, which can be used for either good or evil. A person can have the fullness of wonderful fruits, but those fruits are not the gifts of the Spirit. God distributes the gifts of the Spirit specifically for his divine purposes. So what happened after I placed that call to Mr. Warrington? A few minutes after my telephone call, I noticed the red streak had receded back about an inch. Within an hour, it totally disappeared. I'd been healed, obviously, and I knew that would happen. I believed it because I knew from personal experience, from my perception, that Mr. Warrington had that gift of healing. So, a few years later, a new cat showed up at my door. It's been 5 years since Smokey died, and once again, my heart was won over. We named that new cat Blinky. So, using my somewhat limited talent for making things, I made an enclosed shelter for him. Jody and I both love animals, so we applied the fruit of kindness to take good care of Blinky. So, that's the difference between God-given gifts, talents, and fruit. And in closing, speaking of fruit of a different kind, I like to eat. And I look forward to eating with all of you later, and I'm sure that there's some great food available made by some cooks with some great talent.